You check his profile without opening it so he doesn't see you've been there. You rewrite the message 3 times and don't send it. You tell yourself you're not that invested, but you're watching. You're waiting. You're already in it. And the worst part? You're not even sure you want to stop. You don't know exactly when it started. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being the one he was reaching for. You became the one doing the reaching, and something in you already knows why. What comes next is going to name it, in a way you probably haven't heard before. Here's what most people never tell you about attraction. It doesn't grow from effort. It grows from uncertainty. Not the game-playing kind, the human kind. You know this feeling. You felt more drawn to someone the moment they seemed less certain about you. People move toward what they haven't fully figured out yet. They chase what feels like it has its own direction, its own life, its own pull. Not unavailable, not withholding, just genuinely somewhere else. And the moment that changes, the moment you start organizing yourself around him, something in his behavior changes too. Less curiosity, less initiative, less movement toward you. And the moment you became easy to read, he stopped trying to read you. You probably felt it before you could name it. The shift in his energy, the responses getting shorter, the gap between messages getting longer. And that's the part you don't see while it's happening. Until now. And what comes next is going to show you exactly where it started. Not in him, in you. Here's what that looks like. You don't lose the dynamic because you're too much. You lose it because you disappear trying to be enough. You respond before you've even thought about it. You soften what you actually mean. You fill silences that didn't need filling. You make yourself easy to read, easy to access, easy to have. And without realizing it, you remove the thing that was drawing him in. Yourself. Because the woman he was curious about, that was you. You had somewhere to be. You had thoughts you didn't immediately share. You had a life that didn't pause every time he hadn't responded yet. And slowly, you disappeared into the adjusting. And when you did, he stopped chasing. And in that same window, you didn't stop. It just looked like trying harder. And what comes next is what nobody in this space will say out loud. Because it requires looking at yourself, not him. And most people aren't ready for that. Here's what creates the pull. Think about the moment he started pulling back. You probably gave him more. When you move towards someone who isn't moving, you don't close the gap. You become easier to take for granted. Because attraction needs a current. And you can't create one by standing still in his direction. The current comes from having your own life, one that keeps moving whether he's in it or not. When you reach out, he feels it. When you don't, he notices. There's space, and in that space, something starts pulling at him. Where did she go? What is she thinking? Does she even think about this the way he does? He's thinking about you, not because you tried to make him, but because you weren't waiting for him to. And that is impossible to ignore, unless you're too close to see it. And most people are. And what comes next, you'll recognize immediately. Because you've been living it. You just haven't seen it clearly until now. And that's the thing. It doesn't feel like chasing. It feels like caring. It looks like checking his name on your screen before you've even decided to open it. It looks like closing the chat without replying because you don't trust yourself to say the right thing. It looks like responding in 30 seconds when you said you'd wait. And it looks like lying awake that night, replaying the conversation, trying to find the moment it changed. And you've probably recognized yourself in at least one of those. Maybe all of them. Sit with that for a second. Because underneath every single one is the same thing. The fear. The fear that if you stop reaching it, all disappears, and you'll be left with the silence you've been running from. But the moment that fear starts driving your behavior, he doesn't need to move toward you anymore. You're already moving toward him. And while you're doing that, you can't be somewhere else. And he can feel the difference, even when you can't. And here's what's uncomfortable about all of this. The behaviors you just recognized, they're not about him. They never were. And once you see what they're actually about, you can't go back to pretending they were. Here's what changes things. Not learning to play it cool. Not finding the right strategy. Not performing a version of yourself designed to keep his attention. Seeing yourself clearly. Every time you adjusted to keep him comfortable. Every time you said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time you chose his comfort over your own honesty. You felt it. That small, quiet drop. The one that happens right after you send the message you weren't sure about. Right after you say it's fine. Right after you stay. And what it said underneath was this. His response matters more than your honesty. His comfort is worth more than your truth. That's not a strategy problem. That's a self-worth problem. And seeing that clearly, even when it's uncomfortable, is the only thing worth looking at. Because the further you get from seeing it, the further you get from the woman you were before you started adjusting. Not a technique, not a strategy, not a quieter version of the same fear. A return to her. She didn't go anywhere. You just couldn't see her underneath everything you were carrying. And when you find her again, your presence changes. It stops feeling like need and starts feeling like gravity. Because what comes next is the question most people spend years avoiding. And the answer is going to show you something about yourself that has nothing to do with him. Why does his silence feel like a verdict on my worth? And if you sit with that question, you'll recognize at least one of these. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I should pull back and see what he does. Maybe if I stop bringing it up, it goes back to how it was. Maybe I just need to want this less. And then the one underneath all of them, the one you don't say out loud. Maybe I'm just too much for someone to stay. That one, that's the real thing. And you've probably carried that thought for longer than you'd admit, without ever saying it out loud, without ever asking where it came from. It has nothing to do with him. The fear was already there, long before he arrived, before you even had a name for it. And that's why his silence feels like a verdict. It was already there. He just confirmed the one you'd already written about yourself. That's anxiety wearing love's clothes. And once you know the difference between reaching because you care and reaching because you're scared, something shifts. Not a decision, a recognition. You can finally see which one you've been doing. And that changes more than just this, because what comes next isn't just about him. It's about every room you've ever walked into wondering if you were enough. And what happens when you finally stop asking? At some point, something changes. Not in him, in you. You stop checking as often. The silence that used to feel like a verdict starts to feel like quiet. And the waiting, it just stops. You remember what you care about, what you were doing before all of this. And when that happens, he notices. But more importantly, so do you. You notice that you stopped waiting, that you stopped adjusting, that you stopped measuring your worth by whether he was moving toward you. That is the shift. Not him. You. It was never about making him chase you. It was about seeing the moment you started chasing him and understanding why, and taking that understanding into every room where you've ever felt like you had to earn your place. That's the real shift. And once you feel it, you don't go back. You can see it now, the moment it used to start. And now that you see it, that's already the beginning of showing up as yourself, without apology. If something in this video just shifted for you, you'll know. Even if the only words you have for it are, I see it now.